listeners. We are here this afternoon to discuss the relevance of Ronald Waddell within today's Guyana. So it is all a part of the commemorative activities to remember Waddell, who was assassinated 13 years ago on the 30th of January 2006. This afternoon, our discussion will be led by a panel which includes Brother Barrington Braithwaite and Brother Heston Bostwick. I am Elton McCray. Now, to the members of the panel, you have worked with Brother Waddell over the years that he was out there active in the fields and the trenches. Now, how do you see Brother Waddell's message and his activism in today's Guyana, where we are talking about reparations, where we are still, as a people, struggling to get a piece of the economic pie called Guyana, where today our children are still not responding the way they should be responding to the needs of society. In a Guyana which shall soon become an oil economy, how do you see the messages and works of Brother Waddell in today Guyana? Brother Braithwaite, may start.
The relevance of Waddell, one of the most important things that Waddell emphasized is research. Acquire information, not based only on hearsay, but based on statistics, and go to where the work has been done. A lot of the world is changing as we go ahead. People are saying the country's getting harder. The thing is, you are commanded to spend more money. Where if you're a parent, you now have to do things that your child needs. You got to buy computers, you got to buy printers, etc. So there is a demand. We were a colony, so we have never done. President Granger mentioned the Six Sisters, the course of the Six Sisters, and a whole set of directives came at him from people who don't understand, have never paid attention to our concern and the concerns that Waddell was talking about, which is employment at grassroots level, etc., and people who are not born rich. We have never divested or created additional businesses, industries from our 6 main income earners that we inherited from the colonial times. There's a reason for this also, in that in the 70s there was a oil crisis that destroyed countries that were not oil generating. We know that many of the investment opportunities that were created up to the Beale deal from the Barnum era right up to the Beale deal were closed down by Venezuela. They campaigned to keep us from investing, from attracting investment. The hydro project to the Beale deal. So that kind of information is not. Waddell, we discussed this. I could remember discussing this, sitting in a car and discussing why, how, and wondering why this thing was not even taught in our schools. Because our children think there is, the political propaganda now is talking about youth employment. The government failed. I mean, this is a 3-year-old government, a 3.5-year-old government, and you're saying it failed. to offer youth employment. From 2000 to 2015, the Caribbean Development Bank demonstrated that we had a staggering 40% of youth employment. It was the highest. From 2015 to 2017, that amount has reduced to 21% or something like that. So you have people who are going about their business completely unaware of things, and that was what Waddell was doing when he was assassinated. He had endeavored to bring relevant information to our people, because as he said, not everybody could buy 3 newspapers a day. Demands on bread and butter were more. So there is no information source to help us to determine how the directions we are going. We lost, everybody talks about sugar. Oh, the sugar industry cut down. We lost, I mean, for us who grew up in Georgetown, from Le Penitence to Kingston, Georgetown was a port town. The stevedores and the waterfront employed thousands of people. Except for one area where political arson destroyed it, that was Rice Marketing Board, where I worked. All the rest were destroyed by developments in merchant shipping. So you had thousands of people unemployed. The waterfront doesn't exist. Where the Cullinan Center used to be was a hive of activity on Lombard Street. Is a place they're trying to get somebody to rent it. The last time I saw. So what I think is the concern now that has generated this push to get the government out of the way is that what this government has done is advocate. A lot of young people are trained. They're advocating, they're changing the mindset. We went to school to come out and get jobs. That was the thinking. Now you're trying to get young people to think, go to school, come out and create a job. So, yeah. You know, so Waddell is relevant because what I'm trying to package here, he would have packaged it over a period of time. Nobody's packaging the information.
Yes, so I see what you're saying, but let's give Brother Heston Bostwick, the opportunity to say what he considers is the relevance of Waddell within a present-day Guyana.
Good afternoon, Guyana. Thank you for having me in your home. Thank you for having us in your homes. The reality of Brother Waddell had a program you call Taking Care of Business, where he was spending almost all his time to teach the youth that they can make better choices, that they can create their own businesses, and that they can be able to sustain themselves as a result of creating their own businesses. You see, in the time when Brother Waddell was in the streets, in the trenches, in the gutters, trying to motivate and teach the youth of Guyana to make better choices, were in those days that we call the dark days. And in those days, the youth come up with an ideology of get rich quick or die trying. And Brother Waddell understood clearly where that concept or that ideology derived from. And he was trying to let the youth understand that making that choice or those choices is what result today. Today you have in excess of over 400 youth who are fatherless, who actually grew up without their fathers, and they lost their fathers through the very dark age that we don't want to really go back to. And that is why Brother Waddell relevance today is relevant enough to let the youth understand that this government had changed a system where we had the choice of a bullet rather than having the choice of a ballot. And now that this government had carefully brought the choice of a ballot and refused the choice of bullets, I think it affords the youth a better opportunity to first try to re-educate themselves, try to seek where the opportunities are and grab at them, try to ensure that whatever job they create, they must be able to sustain it. And the adult must be able to listen to the youth. It's time where, and this is what Brother Waddell was saying to the seniors, it's time where we need to stop saying the youth want this and the youth want that and the youth want this. It's time we must be able to gather the youths, mobilize them and sit and reason with them and understand what are their vision and try to give advice where necessary. Try to understand what are their endeavors and try to give guidance. Too often at times we try to see, as elders, we try to see the youth must have this and the youth must have that, or we try to create what we feel the youth must have. But Brother Waddell was trying to say, give the youth their space, listen to them, and out of listening to them and giving them their space, you will be able to understand what is the future they are crafting. And as elders with experience and so, we must be able to be there to give the necessary guidance that would keep them on that sustainable path.
Yes, my brothers. Both of you have identified the area of entrepreneurship, that is job creations, not only being trained to take a job, but you must also be with the capacity to create jobs for yourself and maybe others. How do you see this kind of a thing happening in present day? Are we facilitating that kind of activity at any levels in this country? And what would you recommend be done to ensure that such a part is taken? Because, as Brother Barry said, a whole sway of job types are today redundant. The waterfront workers, he specified. But if you go into other areas, the same thing will happen, because as technology improved, jobs became redundant. I remember the days when people were trained to do shorthand and typing. Today, shorthand is the last thing. The radio operator back in the day were trained to do Morse code. That again is the last thing. It's redundant. So how do you see our system preparing our youth today, or what recommendations would you make to maybe the main facilitator of training, the government, to ensure that our youths are in step with what is going on at the level of technology and the world today?
That's a devil's advocate question. One of the areas that I hope our audience is paying clear attention to, that the government did was open on Avenue of the Republic, the commission.
Industrial?
No, there's a commission of that is a commercial commission.
Yeah.
And the idea that our youth, we've always had talented people, and when you mention the term copyright, people seems to think that it's just the arts, just music or art. No, copyright also embodies trademarks, patents, recipes. We have a creative people, and one of the things we've got to push for is the registration or the creation of a copyright and the education towards this. People must understand what it means. How do they apply it? How do they take grandma's recipe and make it an industry? This is not yet fully branched off even by, I wrote to small business people some time ago. I said, you got to start teaching people about copyright, about ownership. Without the right to patent, without the right to design a machine and be able to file that design, you will always be subject to piracy. Years ago, I approached the Prime Minister at the American Ambassador's home, Sam Hines, in the presence of Palomo Mohammed and Malcolm DeFreitas. And I said, what about copyright? And Sam Hines turned to me and said, well, we can't have copyright. Too much of our constituency live off of piracy. I said, well, your constituency is living off of me. Because I have had cases where I arrest, apprehend people by force, photocopying things that I have done, took it to the station. The police were in a quandary. They didn't know what to do. And I knew the sergeant at that time. I think this woman who retired, Morrison, was the inspector in charge. The guy, he said, bruv, how you go about doing this thing? How the laws, I said, man, I'm just intimidating the man because I know you don't know what to do. So basically, you got the only place, and I've been saying it over and over, that is celebrating talent and saying talent is unfortunately the Georgetown prisons. They have released things and said, look what inmates have done. The inmates are talented. I've taken, every time they make a submission, I've taken it out. We've done a course in carpentry, in cabinet making, and they've done this. That has to be transferred into an institute that accommodates these people. From the time copyright was mentioned, the opposition leader got up and said, no copyright. Because...
Are you saying the present opposition leader or...
The present opposition leader. I'm talking about now. This was months ago.
Oh.
This was a few months ago.
No, you mentioned Sam Hines.
No. Yes, but I'm talking... No,
so,
well, I'm bringing it forward. I'm talking about Barrett Jagdeo got up and said, no. Freddie started... I don't know who he owed a favor to. He started writing against copyright. Everything he wrote was wrong. And I was committed to correcting it. So, Freddie's my colleague.
So, how do we see Waddell alongside copyrights?
Well, at that time, he was saying, man, we got to get the copyright. We got too much of young people. There are businessmen who, I could tell you experience with my son. My son had a team and they did rap music and he did write lyrics and they would put them on a laptop and they're doing this music. And I told him, I said, boy, don't put your thing on the net until you PRS it. He said, but I got in, you know, he was getting a lot of downloads. I said, yeah, people are downloading, they're stealing your stuff. Because if you don't PRS it and you put it on the internet, it's in the public domain. Anybody could take it. And we believe that only in the English-speaking world there's a market. There are places like Indonesia with 300 million people that you could market anything to. So he lost a lot of work. Lost a lot. Earned nothing. And there are people who are pretending to be scouts who are taking these guys' tracks and selling it. I know how that works. I know it works. The thing is, education. If a man has one song that makes it, he could take care of his family. Because what he does, if he gets a song that is popular, there is something called licensing, where a man will license a copy for India, another one would license one for South America. You're not singing it. They're taking your song and they're going to do their version of it and pay you for their market. That is how songs work. That is how the art and the development business works. So copyright would be, at this time, with what is happening in social media, etc. Let me tell you what's happening. There was a time when you can go and download things, items, for research on social, on Pinterest and those things. A lot of the things closed down. When you go up on them sites, they're bare. Remember recently there was a big change over at Congress.
Yes.
With copyright. Those people are cutting back on what they put on the thing.
So, Brother Bostwick, how do you see the entrepreneurship program mentoring or developing our young people into being entrepreneurs? Or what sort of advice would you give to ensure that this happens so that we can create jobs locally, we can create markets for locally produced goods and services?
I tell you what, I've recognized that under this current government, I've recognized they brought back the system you call local government. In your days, you would have known it as village council and so forth, right?
Yes.
That is where you have persons in the community will know who does what, who have the talent to do this, who have the ability and so forth. So therefore, in going forward, I recommend that we need to have a data gathering, a database gathering, where in every community we know who are carpenters, we know who are singers, we know who are writers, and you have them. You mobilize them on a databases gathering, whereby you'll be able to know whenever you need the expansion. You have them, you know that in All Boys Town we'll have 10 singers, in Tiger Bay we'll have 20 singers. So when you're looking at a career of any profession or entrepreneurship, it becomes easy. And you see, when you're able to mobilize, when you're able to do the data gathering and you know where they are, you're able to then determine what are their challenges, what are their needs in going forward. And in so doing, they will be able to initially take care of their own businesses and sustain themselves.
Okay, so the recommendation basically is we must have a baseline data of our communities.
Yes.
We must know who are the nurses in our communities,
We need to do that.
Midwives.
who are the midwives, who are the carpenters, so that if in the future we need to develop young skills, we can go to these people who can then
and at the same time get the knowledge from those who are the seniors, because to my mind it's a sin to die with your knowledge. And one of the things I've observed is that most seniors are not prepared to sit down with the youth and dispense their knowledges, and that is important. If you're a good Guyana, you must be able to sit down with a group of 5-10 young men and say, boy, in future you will know to make your own table, you'll be able to make it.
This is what pertained in the past, where we had these apprenticeship programs going.
And that's what built us.
Many of us were apprenticed. I was apprenticed to my cousin who was a tailor while growing up.
Right.
You know.
I was apprentice to my father Guyana shop.
So you see, the point is once we as elders able to start gather these youths, mobilize them, then we'll be able to galvanize and sterilize them.
So you're actually saying that among us ourselves there is something we have lost.
Yeah.
Because if we are unable to transcend, to pass on our knowledge to our younger the younger members of our community, then something is wrong with us.
Take for instance this. You have many forums of all magnitude. And when you go into those places, you hear the I, the T's, and the crossing the T's and that and the I's. When you look around in the audience, if you see 2 youth, you see many. All they're doing is having a recycling of knowledge amongst themselves, because you go in an auditorium, 90% are elders.
There's a reason for that.
Well, in my humble opinion, the reason for that is where the elders are not gathering the youth and dispense their knowledge, that whenever other knowledge are being dispensed, the youth already have a desire to continue that learning process.
Yes, you were saying something, brother.
I spoke to a friend, Owen, in Alberton. I said, Owen, I want there's a development process happening. I want you to gather some youths and do some applications. About 4 years later, I saw Owen. I said, Owen, what? He said, bro, they want to be gunman, they want to work with boss man. We had a period when this entire country was criminalized, you know, with support for the state. The Raja Khan era that killed Waddell had state support. The PPP state supported it. You had young young people, you spoke about the get rich quick. Don't dismiss it. It's a mentality of then they start smoking, so they can't think straight. So, and that has been introduced into our areas. Now you have youths who you have to cajole, you have to coerce into understanding that, listen, there is no easy money. The guy who drove up in a car from St. Stephen Street and told me, you're going to Beirut, call it off. I know him as a kid and drove. He's dead, you know. He, whole family, everybody. All those guys who were there gone. They work out methods to get rid of them, the very people that he's serving. So basically, we have a problem. You and I ran rescue.
Yes.
We got to St. George's School. And I am telling the children that the Mayas used cocaine paste to get the sacrificial people. And the teacher came up to me and said, "Sir, you can't do that." I said, "Why?" He said, "We don't teach history in this school." What? I said, "You don't do what?" When we came downstairs, the headmistress came downstairs.
It was before we came downstairs.
That she picked up the
She observed that the kids were throwing things through the windows, so she went around and picked, and she showed us. Because when we got there, they felt that we were coming from the police.
We were police.
We
just trying to tell them don't use stuff.
You know, so it is sickening.
We got problems.
Anyhow,
it's not our time. It's not the time when
I
we
remember
were
Ronald
apprentices.
Waddell. I remember Ronald was working, especially among the depressed communities, or at some of the depressed communities. He was in Buxton, he was in All Boys Town, and you know. And working in these communities, I think he was really trying to encourage people, our youths, to stay away from conflict with the law.
That's a reality.
But yet today, when you look at our prison population, we see 80% of the people are Africans. When we look at the population in the New Opportunity Corps, we see again Africans. Yet, while on the other hand, we are no more than probably 37% according to the statistics in this country. So how come our numbers are so large? It is definitely saying to me and the rest of the world that we as a community have failed our youth.
No.
Let me butt in here.
You talk.
You can record. Now, let us look at the reality. In 20 years, right, in 2 decades, a child growing in 2 decades, what they absorb is what they will carry almost to the rest of their lives. And you will recall they had a system on the previous regime, no child left behind. Today, there are many on the road cannot even write their whole names. And I'm not...
It's a system of creating illiteracy.
Being derogatory. I'm being factual. And that in itself creates the big problem.
Yes, okay. We will take a short break and come back. We will just... Okay, she's not breaking yet.
About parents and guardians. Enroll your children at Acta Center of Learning and Afrocentric Orientation. Registered by the Ministry of Education, CLACO has extremely affordable fees and caters for pupils from play school, nursery 1 and 2, as well as primary from grade 1 to 6. We provide a variety of programs, including information technology, allied arts, and sports. We even have a safe and secure recreational facility, including a special play park for all students, built to meet the needs of all our pupils. Our programs are delivered by certified, competent, and caring teachers. Your children's success is our goal. Register now for September 2016 school term. Call us today at 231-6224.
She gonna say anything.
What's the
Yes. We are back. And we have since been joined by Brother Ryan Belgrave, an executive member of the GYSM.